The desert heat shimmered in waves across the California training range. 106 degrees, the kind of heat that turned tactical gear into an oven, turned sweat into salt deposits on skin, turned every breath into work. Tessa Marlowe lay prone in the sand. Blood seeped through the right sleeve of her desert camouflage uniform, spreading dark and wet against the tan fabric. A ricochet. Training round fragment. Small piece of copper jacket that had found flesh instead of dirt. The radio crackled with panic. Docs hit, docs down. Her voice came back calm, clinical. The voice of someone who'd made peace with pain a long time ago. Negative. Continue mission. Sullivan has femoral bleed. Covington tourniquet high and tight. I'm operational. Her left hand pressed against her own wound. Pressure, direct pressure, first rule of hemorrhage control. Her right hand moved with practiced precision, directing the chaos around her into something resembling order. Two hands, one bleeding, one healing. Both steady. 20 meters away, Lance Corporal Kieran Sullivan thrashed in the sand, red hair matted with sweat and dust, freckled face gone pale. The femoral graze wasn't fatal, not yet, not if someone kept their head, not if someone remembered their training while everyone else forgot theirs. Tessa's eyes tracked the scene with tactical precision. Corporal Bryce Covington fumbling with the tourniquet. Staff Sergeant Wyatt Bishop providing cover rifle up, scanning for threats that didn't exist in a training scenario, but existed in muscle memory. Gunnery Sergeant Ford Callahan shouting orders that were getting lost in the confusion. And through it all, Tessa Marlowe bled into the California sand while keeping 19-year-old Dalton Reed from going into shock while walking Covington through a procedure he should have known by heart while calculating time to medevac and blood loss rates and treatment priorities. Those steady hands, even when one of them was bleeding. The question no one was asking yet, the question that would define everything that came next. How does a 5'3" Navy corpsman stay this calm while taking fire? Where did she learn to read a battlefield like a book written in a language only warriors speak? Who taught her to bleed without flinching? The answers were buried under 5 years of silence, buried under a promise made at a graveside, buried under layers of deliberate obscurity that were about to crack wide open. But that was still 72 hours away. 72 hours before the shooting, 72 hours before the revelation. 72 hours before Tessa Marlowe's carefully constructed wall between healer and warrior came crashing down. 72 hours earlier, the rifle range at Camp Pendleton stretched across 500 yards of cleared terrain, 8 shooting lanes marked with numbered posts, an observation tower rising at the rear where range safety officers watched everything through high-powered optics. The Pacific Ocean, visible in the distance, blue and vast and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out under the California sun. Tessa Marlowe stepped off the transport vehicle carrying medical equipment in a tactical bag that hung from her shoulder like a statement of purpose. The pack weighed 42 pounds, more than a third of her body weight. She'd carried heavier. Distance mattered more than weight. Weight was just physics. Distance was will. She was 24 years old, 5 feet 3 inches, 115 pounds soaking wet. In a world of men who averaged 6'2" and 210, she stood out like a period in a paragraph of exclamation points. The Marines were running close-quarter battle drills. The sharp crack of rifle fire echoed across the range in controlled bursts. Professional, precise. The sound of men who'd done this 10,000 times and would do it 10,000 more. They turned as one when she approached. 8 pairs of eyes. 8 evaluations happening simultaneously. Not hostile, not welcoming. Professional skepticism. The kind of assessment that happens when someone new arrives to fill a slot where someone good used to be. Gunnery Sergeant Ford Callahan stood at the center of the group, 45 years old, 6 feet even. The kind of weather that comes from deployments, not age. Afghanistan, written in the lines around his eyes. A scar on his left forearm that spoke of close quarters work. He held a clipboard in one hand and the posture of a man who'd learned to carry a responsibility like weight that never got lighter. Corpsman Marlowe. His voice carried surprise, not hostility, just the slight recalibration that happens when expectation meets reality. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. Tessa's voice was steady. Professional, the voice of someone who'd answered this kind of surprise before and would answer it again. No defensiveness, no need to prove anything before being asked, just competence waiting to be demonstrated. Callahan's eyes went to her medical bag. He could see the weight distribution and how she carried it, not struggling, not compensating, just carrying it the way someone carries something they've carried for 18 months straight. Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Tessa Marlowe, she continued, reporting for team integration training. Corporal Bryce Covington stood to Callahan's left, 32 years old, 6'3", 220 pounds, a former college football player who'd found a better team in the Marine Corps. Blonde hair and a high and tight, blue eyes that held the particular skepticism of someone who'd seen plans fall apart when the wrong person was in the wrong position. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to. The look said it all. Said, this is who they sent. Said, hope she can keep up. Said, last medic couldn't handle it when things went wrong. Chief Warrant Officer Lawson Drake observed from his position near the tactics board. 52 years old, silver hair, lean in the way that comes from decades of physical maintenance rather than natural metabolism. Gulf War veteran, Iraq, 2 decades of watching young warriors arrive and either become old warriors or become memories. His eyes were different from Covington's. Not skeptical. Evaluating. There's a difference. Callahan gestured toward the group. Team, this is Corpsman Marlowe. She'll be integrating with our operations for this training cycle. He paused, weight behind the pause. Our last corpsman had 4 years of experience. Petty Officer Hayes, good Marine, solid medic. Past tense. The weight of past tense in a combat unit. He froze under fire during a live exercise. Hesitated when one of ours went down. Cost us precious seconds. The wounded Marine survived, but Hayes didn't survive the guilt. Requested transfer. Got it. Callahan's eyes met Tessa's. No malice, just honesty. That's the standard you're walking into. That's what this team expects. We don't need heroes. We need steady hands when everything's falling apart. Tessa held his gaze. Understood, Gunnery Sergeant. 2 words. No promises, no declarations, just acknowledgement of expectations. Lance Corporal Kieran Sullivan stepped forward. 22 years old, 5'11". Irish-American kid from Boston with red hair and freckles and the kind of open face that hadn't yet learned to hide emotion behind tactical professionalism. Youngest on the team, still finding his place in the hierarchy. Don't mind them, Doc, he said quietly, voice carrying the accent of South Boston. They're protective, not mean. Tessa gave him a small nod, appreciated, but didn't need the reassurance. She'd walked into skeptical rooms before. Rooms full of people who looked at her and saw limitations rather than capabilities. She'd learned early that words didn't change minds, only actions did. Staff Sergeant Wyatt Bishop stood near the armory entrance, 38 years old, designated marksman. Dark features, the kind of stillness that comes from spending hours behind a scope, learning patience as a tactical skill. His rifle leaned against the wall beside him, Pirate 82, a 150 caliber precision instrument that weighed 30 pounds unloaded. He watched Tessa with the particular attention of someone who understood that important details often came in unexpected packages. Private First Class Dalton Reed stood at the edge of the group, 19 years old, blonde crew cut, southern accent thick enough to spread on toast, eager, inexperienced. The kind of young that still thought war was adventure rather than arithmetic. Callahan gestured toward the barracks. Quarters are this way. You'll be in the separate female barracks. Not ideal for team integration, but regulations are regulations. Stow your gear, debrief at 1400 hours. Medical drill at 1500. We clear. Clear, Gunnery Sergeant. The female barracks were exactly what Tessa expected. Functional, isolated. A converted administrative building that now served as quarters for the handful of female service members attached to combat units. She was the only occupant. That was fine. Solitude was a tactical advantage in its own way. She unpacked methodically. Medical equipment sorted by function and urgency. Combat application tourniquet systems. Hemostatic gauze. Chest seals. Airway adjuncts. Intravenous supplies. Emergency medications. Each item placed with the precision of someone who understood that chaos demanded order. That when everything fell apart, muscle memory needed clear pathways. Books came next. Medical texts. Trauma surgery manuals. Combat casualty care protocols. The kind of reading material that filled the hours between missions, between training, between the moments when hands needed to be busy or minds needed to be elsewhere. No photographs, no personal items, nothing that spoke of a life outside the uniform. That was deliberate. Tessa Marlowe kept her past in a place where it couldn't leak into her present. The only exception was buried at the bottom of her footlocker. Under the medical texts, under the spare uniforms, a worn leather journal, brown leather soft with age and handling, her father's handwriting visible through the slightly open pages. She didn't take it out, didn't read it, just confirmed it was there. Confirmation was enough. Sullivan appeared in the doorway, respectful knock even though the door was open. Doc Gunny wants you at the range in 5 for initial assessment. Copy that. Thank you, Corporal. He lingered, young enough to still think conversation might bridge gaps that only time and shared experience could cross. They'll come around, he said. They're just protective. We've been a team for 6 months. You're the variable. Nothing personal. Tessa shouldered her medical bag. Corporal, I don't take professional skepticism personally. It's earned, not given. I plan to earn it. Sullivan smiled. You sound like a lifer doc. 18 months deployed, 63 casualties treated, 0 lost to preventable causes. I'm here to do a job, not make friends. She walked past him toward the range. Sullivan watched her go, something in the way she carried herself. Something that didn't quite match the profile of a corpsman who'd been in less than 2 years. An edge, a precision, something familiar but not quite placeable. He'd seen it before, in operators, in people who'd been forged in different fires. But she was a medic, just a medic, wasn't she? The afternoon heat hit 105 degrees, the kind that made thinking difficult for people who weren't used to it, the kind that turned movement into mathematics, every action, a calculation of energy versus necessity. The Marines moved through it like fish through water. Acclimated, adapted. They'd trained in worse. Tessa watched from the shade of an equipment shelter as they ran through formation drills. Movement patterns, communication sequences. The ballet of small unit tactics where everyone knew their position and everyone trusted the person to their left and right to know theirs. But she wasn't watching the formations. She was watching Private First Class Marcus Kendrick, 20 years old, 6'1", Georgia kid who'd joined to escape a town with no future. He was moving wrong, subtle, not obvious to someone who wasn't looking, but Tessa was looking. His steps were slightly off rhythm, his movements less fluid than they should have been. His face flushed beyond what the heat should produce, his hands trembling just slightly on his rifle. Heat casualty, early stages, maybe 10 minutes from serious, 20 from critical. The team hadn't noticed. They were focused on the drill, on the movements. On the tactical problem, Callahan was walking them through. Tessa moved. She crossed the 30 yards between shelter and formation with quick, purposeful strides. Not running, running would cause alarm, just moving with clear intention. Gunnery Sergeant, Callahan turned surprised. Training scenarios didn't usually involve corpsman interruptions. Corpsman, Tessa's eyes stayed on Kendrick. Private Kendrick is presenting early heat stroke symptoms. Core temperature likely 104 or higher. Recommend immediate intervention. Every eye went to Kendrick. Now that someone had pointed it out, the signs were obvious. The flush, the slight disorientation, the fine tremor, classic presentation. How had they missed it? Callahan's response was immediate. Kendrick down, now. The private dropped to his knees, then forward onto his hands. Already fading, already losing the thread of consciousness that separated functional from critical. Tessa was beside him before he hit the ground completely. Medical bag already open, ice packs in hand. She'd pulled them during her walk across the range. Anticipated need, prepared response. Ice packs to groin, armpits, neck, she said. Clinical, calm. Core cooling. Staff Sergeant Bishop, I need you to elevate his legs. Corporal Covington water. Small sips when he's coherent. Don't let him chug. Her hands move with practiced efficiency. Ice packs positioned. Uniform collar loosened. Assessment ongoing. Pulse rapid but strong. Breathing elevated but regular. Skin hot and dry. Classic heat stroke presentation. Private, can you hear me? Kendrick's eyes focused. Unfocused. Focused again. Yes, ma'am. You're going to be fine. Heat stroke. We caught it early. Stay still. Let the cooling work. Don't try to be tough. Tough doesn't help right now. She pulled a thermometer from her kit. Temporal artery scan, digital readout. 104.2. Exactly what I thought. She looked up at Callahan. He needs evacuation to medical. IV fluids. Monitoring for organ damage. Caught it in time, but heat stroke isn't something to gamble with. Callahan was already on the radio calling for medical transport, but his eyes kept coming back to Tessa, to the way she'd read something they'd all missed, to the calm competence in her movements, to the fact that she'd just potentially saved Kendrick from serious injury or worse. Drake approached quietly, that evaluating look still in his eyes, but now it held something else. Recognition. Good eye, Corpsman. We should have caught that. Tessa repacked her medical supplies with the same methodical precision she'd used to deploy them. High operational tempo, focus on mission, individual signs get lost in group performance. It happens. That's why we have medical oversight. The medical transport arrived within 10 minutes. Tessa briefed the EMTs with clinical precision. Vital signs. Treatment rendered. Timeline of symptom presentation. Professional handoff. Clean transfer of care. When the transport pulled away, Callahan walked over. His expression had shifted. Not completely, but a crack in the professional skepticism. The beginning of something that might eventually become trust. That was sharp work, Corman. Very sharp. Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant. How did you spot it? We were all watching the same drill. Tessa shouldered her medical bag. Different focus, Gunnery Sergeant. You were watching the mission. I was watching the men. Simple answer. True answer. Not the complete answer. Because the complete answer involved years of training that had nothing to do with medicine. Training in observation. In threat assessment. In reading small details that telegraphed larger problems. Training from a man who'd taught her that survival depended on seeing what others missed. But that training was buried. 5 years buried. Under a promise. Under a career choice. Under layers of deliberate distance from a legacy she didn't want to inherit. Callahan nodded. We'll keep watching. We need those eyes. As he walked back to reform the team, Drake moved to Tessa's side. Quiet, observant. That silver-haired evaluation still ongoing. You're not what I expected, Corman Marlowe. What did you expect, Chief? Honestly, someone who'd struggle, someone we'd have to carry. He paused. I don't think we're going to carry you. No, Chief, you're not. The medical drill at 1,500 hours was designed to evaluate trauma response under stress. Complex scenario. Multiple injuries. Time pressure. The kind of chaos that separated competent medics from exceptional ones. The training facility was set up to replicate field conditions. Mannequin casualties with realistic wounds. Pyrotechnic effects to create sensory overload. Audio tracks playing screaming radio. Chatter weapons fire. Everything designed to stress the system. To push decision-making into territory where training either held or collapsed. Senior Medical Officer Lieutenant Commander James Peterson stood with a clipboard and stopwatch. He'd been evaluating combat medics for 12 years. He'd seen hundreds of corpsmen run this drill. He knew the standards, knew what good looked like, knew what exceptional looked like. The scenario began with controlled chaos. 2 mannequin casualties. One with simulated blast injuries, partial leg amputation, penetrating chest trauma. The other with facial injuries and suspected spinal damage. The kind of scenario where triage mattered as much as treatment, where prioritization meant life or death, where every second counted. Tessa entered the scenario space with her medical bag and nothing else. No hesitation, just immediate assessment, eyes scanning, brain processing. Hands already reaching for equipment before conscious thought caught up with muscle memory. Primary casualty first. The blast injuries. The one actively dying. Combat application tourniquet high on the simulated amputated leg. Above the knee, high and tight. Stopping the hemorrhage. First rule, can't help the dead. Stop the bleeding. Assessment of airway. Compromised but manageable. Jaw thrust to open airway. No time for advanced airway management yet. Priorities. Chest seal over the sucking chest wound. Vented, one-way valve. Preventing tension pneumothorax, another killer off the table. All of this in 90 seconds. Then to the secondary casualty. Spinal precautions. Cervical collar, facial wounds assessed, airway checked, breathing adequate, circulation stable. Could wait. Back to primary casualty. IV access, large bore catheter, 18 gauge, left antecubital, lactated ringers running wide open. Fluid resuscitation, combat shock. Push fluids now, sort details later. Communication with simulated medevac. Clear, concise, clinical. 2 casualties. Priority alpha blast injuries, traumatic amputation left leg penetrating chest trauma class. 4 hemorrhagic shock, cat tourniquet, applied chest seal placed IV, running. Priority Bravo facial trauma, suspected spinal injury, stable airway breathing circulation, need immediate evacuation. Peterson's stopwatch showed 4 minutes 18 seconds when Tessa stood and declared the scenario complete. He stared at the readout. 4:18. Standard time for competent completion was 7 minutes. Good corpsman did it in 6. Very good corpsman in 5. 4:18 was exceptional. Peterson walked the scenario checking her work. Tourniquet placement perfect. Chest seal perfect. IV access perfect. Spinal precautions perfect. Communication textbook, 0 errors. 0 missed steps. 0 signs of stress or hesitation. He looked up at Tessa. She stood at parade rest, waiting for assessment. Professional, calm, like she'd just completed a routine task rather than a scenario that made experienced corpsmen sweat. Corpsman Marlowe, where did you train? Naval Hospital Corps School, sir. Then Fleet Marine Force Advanced Training. Then 18 months forward deployed. That doesn't explain this. He gestured at the scenario. This is beyond standard curriculum. This is advanced trauma response. Where did you really train? Tessa's expression didn't change. Professional mask firmly in place. I read extensively, sir. Medical text, trauma surgery manuals. I practice procedures until muscle memory takes over. I take the training seriously. True, but not complete. The reading was real. The practice was real. But there was more. Training that went deeper. Training that started younger. Training from someone who understood that excellence required obsession. Training from a man who taught her that average got people killed. That good wasn't good enough. That the difference between success and failure lived in the millimeters, in the seconds, in the absolute refusal to accept anything less than perfect execution. But that man was 5 years dead, and that training was supposed to be buried with him. Peterson made notes on his clipboard. I'm recommending you for the Advanced Combat Medic course at Fort Sam Houston. You've got the foundation for it. 40% washout rate, but I think you'll make it. Thank you, sir. As Peterson walked away to process the evaluation, Drake approached. That quiet observation had shifted into something else. Curiosity, the kind that comes from seeing pieces that don't quite fit together properly. 418 is impressive, Corpsman. Just training, Chief? That's what you keep saying. Just training, just reading, just practice. He paused. I've been doing this 24 years. I can read people. You're not just anything. You're hiding something. Tessa met his eyes, steady, giving nothing away. Everyone's hiding something, Chief. The question is whether it interferes with mission effectiveness. Does yours? No. Then I guess we're good. But Drake didn't walk away immediately, stood there, evaluating, piecing together data points that didn't quite add up to the picture Tessa was presenting. Small woman, big capability, deep calm under pressure, precision that went beyond standard training, an edge, a sharpness, something that smelled like operator experience rather than medical school. But she was a corpsman. Service records said so, orders said so, she said so. And yet, Drake had learned to trust his instincts. Combat had honed them sharp. And his instincts were saying that Tessa Marlowe had layers that hadn't been peeled back yet. Time would tell. Time and stress and the inevitable moments when training gave way to instinct, when professional masks slipped, when who you really were showed through the cracks. Time always told. Evening brought cooler temperatures and the end of the formal training day. The team dispersed for chow, for equipment maintenance, for the small rituals that filled the hours between missions. Tessa returned to her quarters. Solitude. Necessary space to decompress from a day of constant evaluation. She'd treated Chief Drake's hand earlier. He'd dismissed the wound as minor. She'd seen cellulitis tracking up his forearm, the kind of infection that turned septic if ignored, the kind that killed warriors not through enemy action, but through medical neglect. She'd prescribed antibiotics, explained the risks, scheduled follow-up checks. Drake had listened, taken the medication, accepted the treatment without argument. Small victory, trust earned in increments. She opened her footlocker. The medical text came out first. Trauma surgery, advanced cardiac life support, field medicine under austere conditions, reading material that had filled countless hours across countless deployments. But underneath, buried, the leather journal, her father's journal. She pulled it out this time, held it, leather warm in her hands, worn from years of handling, his handling. Then her handling after he was gone. She didn't open it, not yet, just held it. Connection to a man who'd defined her childhood, who'd shaped her understanding of discipline, precision excellence, who'd taught her to shoot before he'd taught her to drive, who'd passed on a legacy she'd spent 5 years trying to escape. Colonel Garrett Reaper Marlowe, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, Desert Storm, 162 confirmed kills across multiple deployments. Instructor, legend, father. Dead 5 years from cancer that had metastasized from exposure during Gulf War operations. Chemical weapons, burning oil fields, the invisible enemies that killed warriors long after the shooting stopped. She'd promised her mother at his graveside, promised she'd never pick up a rifle again, never follow his path, never become what he'd been. She'd kept that promise. Until 72 hours from now. Until crisis demanded capabilities she'd buried. Until steady hands would need to hold both scalpel and rifle. But that was future. Tonight was just memory in leather and words written in handwriting that looked like her own because he'd taught her penmanship the same way he'd taught her everything else. With precision, with patience, with absolute expectations of excellence. She placed the journal back in the footlocker. Under the texts, under the uniforms. Back to buried. A knock on the doorframe. Sullivan again. Respectful. Young. Doc, some of us are grabbing chow if you want to join. Thank you, Corporal. I'll be along shortly. He left. Good kid, eager. Still learning that team building mattered as much as tactical skills. Tessa stood, shouldered her medical bag, walked toward the chow hall. Behind her in the footlocker and the journal on pages she hadn't read in 5 years, her father's words waited. Words about legacy, about capability, about the moment when who you were met, who you needed to be. That moment was coming, 72 hours and counting. The armory was quiet in the late evening. Most of the team had secured their weapons and departed for the day. Tessa had volunteered to deliver medical supplies to the armory storage, restocking trauma kits, routine logistics. But when she entered, her eyes went immediately to the rifle mounted on the rack near the door. Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber, 30 pounds of precision engineering, semi-automatic anti-material rifle, capable of accurate fire beyond 1,500 meters in trained hands. The kind of weapon that required strength skill and absolute mastery of fundamentals. She'd fired thousands of rounds through weapons exactly like it. Her hand moved before conscious thought engaged. Reached out. Fingers touched the barrel shroud. Slid to the grip. Found the familiar contours. Muscle memory from years of handling. From hours on ranges. From days in positions overlooking targets measured in meters that made most shooters uncomfortable. The grip felt like coming home. Her thumb found the magazine release. Index finger traced the trigger guard. Right hand positioned exactly where it needed to be for proper trigger control. Left hand already moving to the forend to the position that would stabilize the weapon during recoil. Perfect form. Unconscious competence. The kind that only came from repetition measured in years. You know that rifle? Corpsman Bishop's voice came from the back of the armory. He'd been cleaning his own weapon at the maintenance station. Watching. Evaluating with the particular attention of a precision shooter who recognized another shooter's familiarity with weapons. Tessa's hand pulled back from the Barrett like it had burned her. Professional composure reasserted itself, the mask back in place. Only from Manual Staff Sergeant, standard familiarization training. Bishop stood, walked closer. 6 feet, dark features, eyes that had spent years behind scopes learning to read minute details at distance. That didn't look like manual familiarity. That looked like muscle memory. Manuals can be very thorough, Staff Sergeant. Can they teach you where to put your hands without looking? Can they teach you the exact grip position for recoil management? Can they teach you to find the controls without conscious thought? Tessa shouldered her now restocked medical bag. I should get back to quarters. Early day tomorrow. She left before Bishop could press further. Professional retreat. Tactical withdrawal from a conversation that was getting too close to truths better left buried. Bishop watched her go, then looked at the Barrett, looked at where her hands had been positioned. Perfect position. Competition level position. The kind that took thousands of repetitions to ingrain. He pulled out his phone, opened his notes, typed, Corpsman Marlowe. Advanced weapon familiarity. Barrett M82A1, so perfect hand placement. Unconscious competence. Check background. Something wasn't adding up. Corpsman got basic rifle familiarization. They didn't get precision rifle muscle memory. They didn't unconsciously position their hands on 50 caliber rifles like they'd been born holding them. Bishop had been a precision shooter for 12 years. He recognized his own kind, recognized the small tells, the unconscious habits. The way true shooters related to weapons differently than people who just qualified annually. Tessa Marlowe moved like a shooter, thought like a shooter, had hands that knew weapons the way his hands knew weapons. But she was a corpsman. The pieces didn't fit. Not yet. But they would. Secrets in close quarters units had half-lives measured in days, not years. Stress peeled back layers. Crisis revealed truths. Eventually, who you really were showed through the cracks. It always did. Late that night, alone in her quarters, Tessa sat on her bunk and finally opened the journal. Her father's handwriting filled the first page. Strong, precise. The penmanship of someone who'd learned that sloppy writing meant misunderstood orders, meant dead Marines. The date at the top, 2 weeks before he died. When he knew. When the doctors had given up. When all that remained was time to say things that needed saying. Tessa. She closed the journal. Not ready, not yet. Outside, the California night was cool and clear. Stars visible despite the base lighting. The same stars her father had navigated by, had used for celestial positioning, had stared at from positions overlooking targets that would never know they'd been seen until it was too late. 72 hours from now, those stars would watch as Tessa Marlowe made a choice, made the shot, broke the promise, became what she'd spent 5 years running from. But tonight, the journal stayed closed. Tonight, the past stayed buried. Tonight, she was just a corpsman, just a medic, just someone trying to be good at one thing without being defined by another. Tomorrow would bring more training, more evaluation, more careful maintenance of the wall between who she was and who she'd been. 72 hours felt like plenty of time. It wasn't. The crisis was already forming, the pieces already moving. The moment already approaching when steady hands would need to choose between healing and protecting, between promise and necessity, between the life she'd built and the life she'd inherited. 72 hours, counting down. Morning arrived with heat that felt personal. 108 degrees forecast, the kind that made metal burn skin, the kind that turned thinking into labor and movement into mathematics. The patrol briefing began at 0600. Callahan stood before a topographical map pointer in hand, face carrying the particular seriousness that came before operations where things could go wrong. Training evolution, mountain terrain reconnaissance, 8 clicks into the high desert, simulated enemy observation posts. Our job, locate, identify, report. Standard patrol procedures. This is evaluation for the larger training cycle next month. His pointer traced the route. Elevation changes marked in brown contour lines, ravines, ridge lines, the kind of terrain that gave advantage to whoever held the high ground. Weather's going to be a factor. Heat advisory until 1800. Hydration is mission critical. Corpsman Marlowe will be monitoring for heat casualties. After yesterday, I think we all understand why that matters. Eyes went to Tessa, respect starting to replace skepticism. Small shift, earned through action rather than words. Any questions? Silence, professional understanding. This was what they did, what they trained for. Movement through hostile terrain, problem solving under stress, building the muscle memory that kept Marines alive when theory met reality. Kit up, we move in 30. The team dispersed to prepare. Tessa gathered her equipment, medical pack, patrol gear, water, rations, extra supplies. The total load came to 62 pounds on her 115 frame, more than half her body weight. Heavy, but manageable. Sullivan approached his own pack already secured, rifle slung, ready. Doc, you need help with that load? Negative, Corporal. I'm good. That's more than half your body weight. I've carried worse. Distance matters, not weight. Physics was just physics. Will was something else. The patrol stepped off at 0630. 8 Marines, 1 corpsman, moving in tactical formation through terrain that punished mistakes. Heat building with each passing minute. Sun climbing with what felt like personal vendetta. By 0800, they were 4 clicks in, elevation 1,500 feet. Temperature 106 and climbing. The desert stretched in every direction, brown and hostile and indifferent. Tessa monitored the team. Watch for the signs. Watch for what she'd seen in Kendrick yesterday. Fatigue beyond normal. Confusion. Loss of coordination. The tells that said heat was winning, but the team was strong, acclimated, moving well, hydrating properly. Professional execution. The ambush came at 0915. Not real. Simulated, part of the training evolution, pyrotechnics, blank ammunition, the chaos designed to test response under pressure. Except the chaos became real in ways the exercise planners hadn't anticipated. The explosion came from a ravine 300 meters ahead. Smoke, dust, the crack of simulated gunfire from elevated positions. Enemy role players doing their job, creating stress, creating friction. The team responded with practiced efficiency. Immediate action drill, return fire, maneuver to cover, communication. Everything they'd trained. Then Bishop's voice over the radio. Strained, wrong. Contact, I'm hit. Right shoulder, can't manipulate weapon. Tessa's medical instincts engaged immediately. Hit meant wounded. Wounded meant work. Location grid 279 or 486 behind the boulder cluster. She moved, low, fast. 62 pounds on her back didn't slow her. Training from years ago kicked in. Movement under fire. Using terrain, presenting minimal profile, getting to the casualty. Bishop was behind cover, right hand pressed against his shoulder. Blood between his fingers. Not simulated. Real. What happened? Ricochet, training round hit rock fragmented. Caught me in the shoulder. Can't lift my arm. Tessa's hands were already moving. Medical bag open, trauma shears cutting away his uniform sleeve. Assessing the wound, small entry point, clean, no exit wound visible. Fragment lodged in muscle, not arterial, not immediately life-threatening, but painful. Debilitating. She irrigated the wound, applied pressure dressing. Sling to immobilize the arm. You're stable. Needs proper medical facility to extract the fragment. Can you move? Yeah, just can't shoot. The radio crackled. Callahan's voice, command presence overriding stress. All elements exercise has gone hot. Real casualty. Bishop is down. We're still receiving simulated enemy fire, but terrain has actual hostile positioning. We need counter-sniper capability or we're pinned. Pause. Wait in the pause. Anyone else qualified on precision rifle? Silence answered. Uncomfortable silence. The kind that said everyone knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it. Then Drake's voice. Quiet. Certain. Corpsman Marlowe, can you shoot? Every radio in the patrol heard it. Every Marine processing the question. Processing the implications. The enemy role players were on a ridgeline, 820 meters according to Tessa's range estimation, using training weapons but holding tactical positions that would be real in real combat. The scenario had been designed to test response under pressure. Now it was testing something else. Tessa's hands paused on Bishop's dressing. 5 years. 5 years since she'd held a rifle with intent. 5 years since she'd calculated wind and distance and elevation. 5 years since she'd made the promise. But Sullivan was exposed. Covington was pinned. The team was vulnerable because they didn't have the capability to suppress an elevated threat. Training scenario or not, the tactical problem was real. The vulnerability was real. The need was real. Her voice came over the radio, steady, clinical, the same voice she used for medical reports. Affirmative, Chief, I can shoot. Callahan's response came immediately. Command decision made under pressure. How well the question hung, the answer would define everything that came next. Well enough, gunnery, Sergeant. Massive understatement. Deliberate understatement. The kind that hid years behind 2 words. Covington's voice cut in, skeptical, protective. Gunny, she's our medic. This is insane. Callahan's response carried the weight of leadership, of making calls with incomplete information under time pressure. Do we have another option, Corporal? Silence. No other option. Bishop was the designated marksman. Bishop was wounded. The math was simple, brutal, clear. Marlowe Bishop's M24 is with his gear. Can you use it? Yes, gunnery, Sergeant. She finished stabilizing Bishop's wound, moved to his rifle. M24 sniper weapon system, Remington 700 action, 7.62 NATO. The weapon she'd qualified on. The weapon she'd used in competitions. The weapon that felt like extension of intention when held properly. Her hands found it. Muscle memory from thousands of repetitions engaged. Check chamber, check magazine, check scope, automatic sequence, unconscious competence. But her hands were shaking. 5 years, 5 years of distance, 5 years of being someone else, 5 years of deliberate separation from this exact moment. The promise to her mother felt like weight on her chest. Physical pressure, guilt manifesting as difficulty breathing. She chambered around, moved to a position with line of sight to the ridge, 820 meters, elevated target, crosswind from left to right, heat distortion creating mirage. Difficult shot, not impossible, just difficult. Her father's voice came unbidden, memory speaking with clarity of present moment. Breathe in 4 counts, hold 7, out 8, get your heart rate below 70, emotion makes you miss. Calm makes you hit. She settled into prone position, rifle on its bipod, stock into shoulder, eye to scope, the world narrowing to reticle and target and the space between. 820 meters, wind approximately 7 knots left to right, temperature 108 degrees, creating updraft. Bullet drop 32 inches at this distance, wind drift 0.6 miles. Her brain calculated automatically. Years of training producing instant ballistic solutions. Adjustments made without conscious thought. But her hands were still shaking. The target was a role player, using blank ammunition, creating simulated threat for training purposes. But the tactical problem was real. The exposure was real. The test was real. Her finger found the trigger, two-stage trigger, light first stage, clean break at 4 pounds on second stage. She knew this trigger, knew triggers like this, knew them the way surgeons knew scalpels. Breathe in, 4 counts, hold, 7 counts. Her heart rate wouldn't slow. Adrenaline, guilt. 5 years of suppression creating resistance in her physiology. She exhaled. 8 counts, squeezed, the rifle fired, recoil into shoulder, follow through, watching the trace, watching the impact. Miss, 5 inches left, overcorrection for wind, nerves producing error in fundamentals she'd executed perfectly 10,000 times before. The role player continued engaging. The team remained pinned. Covington's voice over radio carried frustration poorly disguised as concern. Damn it. Tessa worked the bolt. Smooth, practiced. Muscle memory unaffected by the miss. Ejected brass, chambered fresh round. Scope back on target. Her hands stopped shaking. The miss had burned away doubt. Failure refined focus. Now there was only target in solution in execution. Second time through the breathing cycle, her heart rate dropped. 70 beats per minute, then 68. The calm that came when training overrode emotion. Wind still left to right, 7 knots, but she'd overcorrected first shot. Adjust point 0.4 mils instead of point 0.6. Trust the calculation. Trust the training. Trust the 10,000 repetitions that preceded this moment. Target moving slightly. Role player repositioning. Account for movement. Lid by half a body width. Breathe. Hold. Squeeze. The rifle fired. Through the scope, she saw the impact. Center mass. 820 meters. Moving target. Crosswind. Heat mirage. Perfect hit. The role player went down following exercise protocols. Hit meant out of play. The simulated enemy fire stopped. Silence crashed over the patrol frequency. Different silence than before. Heavier. Weighted with realization. Tessa safed the rifle. Stood. Moved back to Bishop to reassess his wound. Professional compartmentalization. The shot was done. Medical work remained. But she could feel the stares. Could feel the recalculation happening in 8 Marine minds. The reframing of assumptions. The questions forming. Bishop looked at her with expression caught between gratitude and confusion. Doc, where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Tessa applied fresh gauze to his wound, checked for signs of infection starting. Professional focus on medical task. My father taught me staff sergeant. 200 meters away, Callahan was organizing the patrol's movement to Bishop's position. His voice over radio was controlled. Professional, but carrying undertone of someone processing unexpected information. When the team converged, every eye went to Tessa, to the rifle she'd just used with precision that didn't match her profile, to the small woman who'd just made a shot that many of them couldn't have made. Covington approached slowly. His skepticism had shifted into something more complex. Confusion mixed with respect, mixed with suspicion that pieces didn't fit. Doc, that wasn't basic marksmanship. That was advanced, expert level. Where did you really learn that? My father, Corporal, he taught me to shoot. Taught you that's not teaching. That's thousands of hours of training. That's competition level. That's operator level. Tessa repacked her medical supplies, moved to help Bishop to his feet, deflecting through action, staying focused on mission rather than questions. But Drake was watching with that evaluating expression fully engaged now. Pieces clicking together. Data points forming pattern. Sullivan moved to support Bishop's other side. Young face showing confusion and awe in equal measure. Doc's got some secrets, he said quietly. Drake's response was quiet, certain. Everyone's got secrets. Question is what they mean. The patrol extracted to base under modified procedures. Bishop needed medical facility care. The training evolution was terminated. But the real evaluation had just begun. Because Tessa Marlowe had just demonstrated capability that corpsmen don't have. Precision that required years of dedicated training. Competence that suggested background beyond what her service record showed. And now people were going to start asking questions. Questions she'd spent 5 years avoiding. The medical facility at Camp Pendleton processed Bishop efficiently. Fragment extraction, wound cleaning, antibiotics, pain management, professional military medicine. He'd be fine, few weeks of limited duty. Then back to full operational status. Tessa had stayed through the procedure, professional courtesy, ensuring proper care for a team member, but also avoiding the debriefing she knew was coming. When she finally returned to team spaces, she found Callahan and Drake in the operations office. Waiting, a complete service record pulled up on the computer screen. Callahan gestured to a chair. Sit down, Corman. Not a request, a command. Professional, not hostile, but carrying weight of leadership that required answers. Tessa sat, hands in lap, professional composure intact, but knowing this conversation had been inevitable from the moment she'd squeezed that trigger. Drake spoke first, his quiet evaluation now verbal. We pulled your complete file. Interesting reading. He turned the monitor so she could see her service record, standard information, but sections she'd hoped would stay buried under normal operational review. Rifle qualification, distinguished expert. Never mentioned that in interviews. Wasn't asked, Chief. Marksmanship instructor certification, age 17. Most people can't get that certification until they've been in service for years. You had it before you enlisted. Family background in shooting sports, Chief. Callahan leaned forward, his expression serious but not angry, trying to understand rather than accuse. Your father, we looked him up. Colonel Garrett Marlowe? Reaper Marlowe. The nickname hit like physical impact. Reaper, the name that had followed her through childhood, through competitions, through every shooting event where judges had looked at her last name and made assumptions. Desert Storm, Callahan continued, 162 confirmed kills. Scout Sniper School Chief Instructor. 3 tours, decorated, legendary in the precision shooting community. Pause. Wait. He taught you. Not a question. Statement of fact derived from evidence. Tessa's composure cracked slightly, first real emotion showing through professional mask. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. He taught me. Starting at age 10, competition shooting, tactical applications, everything. Drake's voice remained quiet, probing. Service record shows you were offered admission to Marine Scout Sniper School at age 18. Civilian admission. Almost unprecedented. You declined. Yes. Why? The question Tessa had known would come eventually. The question she'd asked herself 10,000 times over 5 years. She looked at both men, saw professional curiosity, saw respect forming, saw the beginning of understanding that her capability wasn't accident or luck. Because I didn't want to be him, didn't want to be defined by being Reaper's daughter, didn't want my identity wrapped up in body count and longest shot in legacy. Her voice carried emotion now, real feeling breaking through clinical control. When he got cancer, when I watched Desert Storm exposure kill him slowly over 18 months, I promised my mother I'd never pick up a rifle again. Promised I'd save lives instead of taking them. Promised I'd be something different. She gestured to her medical bag. So I joined Navy, became a corpsman, focused on healing, built a career around keeping people alive instead of making them dead. Callahan processed this, commander's brain working through implications. But you kept the skills, maintained the capability. Muscle memory doesn't disappear, Gunnery Sergeant. Training that deep doesn't just evaporate because you want it to. I haven't fired a rifle in 5 years, but apparently some things you don't forget. Drake stood, walked to the window, looked out at the training ranges. That shot today, 820 meters, moving target, crosswind, heat mirage. You missed the first one, but the second one was perfect. That's not muscle memory, that's active skill. I miscalculated wind on the first shot. Overcorrected because I was nervous. Adjusted on the second shot. Most shooters can't make that adjustment under pressure. Can't recalibrate that fast. Can't execute that precisely. Tessa didn't respond, couldn't argue with truth. Callahan stood, moved to a filing cabinet, pulled out a worn leather folder, opened it. Inside was correspondence, official Marine Corps documentation. He pulled out one letter, dated 5 years ago. Your father wrote to the Commandant of the Marine Corps 6 months before he died, recommending you for special consideration in Scout Sniper program despite your civilian status. This is his letter. He handed it to Tessa. She took it with hands that trembled slightly. Her father's words, written when he knew death was coming, written when he still hoped she might reconsider. She didn't read it, couldn't. Not yet. The weight of it was enough. He believed in your capability, Callahan said quietly. Believed you were exceptional. Believed you could be one of the best. He believed I should follow his path. I chose different. Did you or did you just choose to hide part of yourself? The question landed heavy, uncomfortable. True. Drake turned from the window. Corpsman Marlowe, we need to understand what we're dealing with. You're assigned as our medical support. That's your primary mission. We're not questioning that, but you've just demonstrated capability that could be tactically valuable in specific situations. I'm a corpsman chief, not a shooter. You're both, whether you want to be or not. Question is whether you can integrate those capabilities or whether they conflict. Tessa stood, professional composure reasserting itself. With respect, Chief Gunnery Sergeant, I came here to be your corpsman, to provide medical support. What I did today was necessity. Team needed counter-sniper capability. I provided it. Doesn't change my primary mission. Callahan nodded slowly. Fair enough. But I need you to understand something. This team operates in complex environments. Sometimes we need medical support. Sometimes we need tactical capability. Sometimes we need both simultaneously. If you have both skill sets, we need to know, need to plan around it, need to integrate it into our operations. Are you asking me to be a shooter gunnery sergeant? I'm asking you to be complete, to bring your full capability, not to hide parts of yourself because they don't fit the identity you're trying to build. The words echoed her father's letter unread in her hands. The same argument, the same challenge. Be complete, be whole, don't run from capability. She looked at both men, saw opportunity forming, saw the possibility of integration rather than separation, saw a path forward that didn't require choosing between healer and warrior, but also saw the risk, saw the slippery slope toward becoming what she'd run from, saw identity dissolution if she wasn't careful. I need time to think, Gunnery Sergeant. You've got 48 hours, then we have a mission briefing. High-value target recovery, mountain terrain, long-range surveillance. Exactly the kind of operation where medical and tactical might both be needed. He paused. Bishop will still be on limited duty. We'll need another precision shooter. Decision is yours. Corpsman only or corpsman with additional capability. Your call, but make it honestly. Tessa took her father's letter, took the weight of decision, took the recognition that hiding wasn't the same as choosing. I gunnery sergeant. That evening, alone in her quarters, Tessa finally opened her father's journal, the one she'd been carrying, the one she'd been avoiding. The entry was dated 2 weeks before his death, handwriting shaky from medication but still clearly his. Tessa, if you're reading this after I'm gone, I need you to know something. I'm proud you chose healing. The Corps made me a weapon, shaped me into something lethal and effective and successful. But it also made me incomplete. I could take life with precision, but I never learned to save it. You chose better, chose to be what I couldn't be. That takes more courage than anything I did in uniform. But baby girl, I also need you to understand something. You don't have to choose. Being a healer doesn't mean you can't also protect. Having the capability to fight doesn't diminish your commitment to saving lives. The world needs people who can do both, who can read the situation and respond with whatever's required. Medical or tactical, scalpel or rifle. Both hands. Don't be afraid of who you are completely. Don't hide the skills because you think they conflict with your mission. They don't conflict. They complement. You can be both. You should be both. I taught you to shoot because I wanted you to be capable, to be prepared, to be excellent at something difficult. I never wanted you to be just a shooter. I wanted you to be someone who could survive, who could protect others, who could rise to whatever challenge came. You're that person, whether you're carrying a medical bag or a rifle, whether you're saving lives or protecting them. Both hands, Tessa. Use both hands. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll be watching from wherever warriors go when their time is done. Make me proud, not by being me, by being the complete version of yourself. Love, Dad, Reaper, whatever name you remember me by. Tessa read it 3 times. Let the words sink past defenses she'd built, past resistance, past 5 years of running from integration towards separation. Her father hadn't wanted her to be him. He'd wanted her to be whole. The distinction mattered. She opened her footlocker, found the challenge coin from her last shooting competition. Age 17, national championship, first place. The coin she'd buried under medical texts and uniform in denial. She held it in one hand, held her corpsman qualification badge in the other. Both hands, medical and tactical, healer and protector, not contradictory, complementary. The mission brief was in 48 hours. High-value target, mountain terrain, long-range surveillance. The kind of operation where Bishop would normally serve as designated marksman. But Bishop was wounded, limited duty. The team needed capability, needed someone who could provide medical support and precision fire, needed integration, needed someone who could be both. Tessa Marlowe looked at the challenge coin, at the badge, At the journal entry, decision crystallizing. She'd spent 5 years running from her father's legacy, running from identity, running from capability. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to be complete. The next morning, she knocked on Callahan's office door. He looked up from paperwork, saw something different in her expression. Something resolved. Gunnery sergeant, reporting for mission briefing. Medical support plus precision fire capability. Both hands. Callahan stood, extended his hand, respect in the gesture. Welcome to the team, Corpsman, the complete version. Outside, Drake smiled slightly. He'd known. Known from the moment he'd seen her hands on that Barrett. Known she was hiding capability. Known eventually she'd stop hiding. Covington approached. His skepticism had transformed. Changed from doubt to curiosity to something approaching awe. Doc, I owe you an apology. For what, Corporal? For assuming you were just a medic, for not seeing that you could be more. Tessa shouldered her medical bag, familiar weight, but now she'd add the M24 when missions required. Additional weight. Additional capability. Integration. I am just a medic, Corporal. I'm also a shooter when necessary. Doesn't make me more, makes me complete. Sullivan appeared with mission briefing materials. Young face showing excitement, poorly disguised as professionalism. Doc, this is going to be epic. Medical and tactical integration. You're going to revolutionize how we think about corpsmen. Perhaps, perhaps not, but definitely going to stop hiding, going to stop running from capability, going to use both hands, the way her father had always hoped she would. The mission briefing came 48 hours later, exactly as Callahan had promised. The operations room held the full team minus Bishop still on limited duty, shoulder healing, but not yet cleared for tactical operations. Topographical maps covered the table. Satellite imagery displayed on screens. Intelligence reports. Those reports stacked in folders marked with classification stamps that meant someone somewhere had risked everything to gather this information. Callahan stood at the head of the table, commander presence fully engaged. This wasn't training. This was real-world operation with real-world consequences. Hostage situation. Remote village compound in the high desert training area. 11 civilians held by opposition force, estimated at 18 to 20 combatants. Role players for this exercise, but we're treating it as real-world scenario. Full tactical protocols. Live ammunition authorized for precision fire only. He pointed to the satellite imagery. The compound sat in a valley surrounded by ridge lines. Defensible position, limited approaches. The kind of terrain that favored defenders. Intelligence indicates hostages are being held in the central structure. Opposition has observation posts on the surrounding high ground. Standard defensive setup. Our mission extract hostages with 0 civilian casualties. Rules of engagement are strict. Positive identification before engagement. No collateral damage. Drake pulled up detailed imagery showing the ridge lines. Enemy sniper positions confirmed here and here. 800-meter standoff from compound. Overwatch positions that give them coverage of all approach routes. We'll need counter-sniper capability to suppress these positions before we can move on the compound. All eyes went to Tessa, the new reality, the corpsman who could also shoot, the integration of capabilities that changed tactical planning. Callahan continued, Corpsman Marlowe will serve dual role, medical support for casualties and counter-sniper if required. Bishop's still limited duty. She's our precision fire asset for this operation. Covington spoke up, his voice carrying concern rather than skepticism now. Gunny, if Doc's committed to shooting, who's primary medical? Drake has combat lifesaver certification. He backs medical if Marlowe is engaged with precision fire. We flow around the mission requirements, adaptive rather than rigid. The new doctrine, integration rather than specialization, using full capability rather than limiting people to single roles. Tessa studied the maps, calculating distances, identifying firing positions, planning medical staging areas. Her brain working both problems simultaneously, tactical and medical, working together. Questions. Sullivan raised his hand, young, eager, still learning. Rules of engagement for hostages in crossfire. Break contact, reposition, wait for clean shot. We don't risk civilians. This operation succeeds only if everyone comes home, hostages and team. Callahan looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Command emphasis. This is complex, multiple moving pieces. High stakes. Exactly the kind of operation where discipline matters more than firepower. Where patience beats aggression. Where thinking beats reacting. We clear professional acknowledgement around the table. These were veterans. They understood complexity, understood that hard operations required careful execution. Kit up, we step off at 0500 tomorrow. Get rest. Check your gear twice. This one matters. The team dispersed to prepare. Tessa remained studying the maps, memorizing terrain, planning contingencies, medical and tactical, both skill sets engaged. Drake approached quietly. That evaluating expression had shifted to something else. Partnership, perhaps. Recognition of capability. You ready for this, Corpsman? Yes, Chief. This is different than the training patrol. This is full integration, medical and tactical simultaneously. That's a lot to manage. Tessa met his eyes, calm, certain. I've been managing both my whole life, Chief. Just stop pretending I couldn't. Drake nodded slowly. Your father would be proud. My father wanted me to be complete, not just a shooter, not just a medic. Both. I'm starting to understand what he meant. That evening, Tessa performed final equipment checks with the methodical precision that defined her approach to everything. Medical supplies verified. Every item counted. Tourniquets, hemostatic agents, chest seals, IV supplies, airways, medications, the tools that saved lives when metal and physics tried to take them. Then the M24. Strip down, clean, inspect, reassemble, function check, zero confirmation. The rifle that would extend her capability beyond arm's reach, beyond medical intervention, into the realm where distance and precision meant protection. Both sets of equipment, both skill sets. Integration, Sullivan found her in the armory. Young face showing mixture of excitement and nervousness that came before operations that mattered. Doc, can I ask you something? Of course, Corporal. How do you decide when you're medical and when you're tactical? How do you know which one to be? Tessa looked up from her rifle maintenance, considered the question. The same question she'd been asking herself for 5 years. You don't choose which one to be. You assess what the mission needs and respond accordingly. Sometimes that's medical, sometimes tactical, sometimes both simultaneously. It's not about identity, it's about capability, meeting requirement. But what if you're in the middle of treating someone and threat appears? What if you have to switch? Then you switch. Medicine teaches you to triage, to prioritize, to make hard decisions about who needs what when. Tactical thinking is the same. Assess, prioritize, execute. The skills aren't contradictory, they're complementary. Sullivan absorbed this. Processing. I think you're going to change how people think about Corpsman. Maybe, or maybe I'm just going to be good at my job. Both parts of it. The mission stepped off at 0500 under darkness that would transition to dawn during movement to objective. 9 bodies moving through terrain with practiced silence. Night vision engaged. Communication minimal. Professional execution of movement procedures refined through countless repetitions. Tessa moved with the team, her load distributed carefully across her frame. Medical pack, rifle, ammunition, water. Heavy but manageable. Distance and will. They reached the final rally point at 0630, first light touching the eastern horizon. The compound visible 1,500 meters ahead, hostages inside, opposition force deployed in defensive positions. Callahan gathered the team, low voices, final coordination. Surveillance indicates 2 sniper positions on ridgelines. Drake and Jackson spotted them. 840 meters north ridge, 640 meters east ridge. Both have overwatch on our approach routes. He looked at Tessa. Marlowe, you'll establish firing position here. Elevation advantage, clean line of sight to both enemy positions. Your job, suppress those snipers when we begin our approach. Keep them from engaging the assault element. Understood, Gunnery Sergeant. Once snipers are neutralized, you displace to medical staging area here. Prepared to receive casualties. Drake stays with you for security and backup medical. The plan, the integration, using her completely. Covington Sullivan, your assault element with me. We breach compound, extract hostages. Jackson provides overwatch from secondary position. Questions? None. Professional understanding. Complex plan requiring precise execution. The kind of operation where everyone needed to perform perfectly or it fell apart. Execute. Tessa moved to her firing position. Elevated terrain with clear line of sight to both enemy sniper locations. She established prone. Rifle settled. Stock into shoulder. The familiar geometry of precision shooting. Through the scope, she could see the north position sniper. Role player in proper tactical setup. Ghillie suit. Concealment. Professional opposition force doing their job well. Range 840 meters. Wind southwest at 9 knots. Temperature rising toward 90 degrees. Mirage forming. Difficult conditions but not impossible. Her breathing cycled. 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. Heart rate dropping toward operational range. 68 beats per minute, then 65. The calculation automatic. Bullet drop 38 inches. Wind drift zero point 0.7 mils right. Target stationary. Clean shot. Squeeze. The rifle fired. Recoil managed. Follow through maintained. Through the scope, she watched the trace. Watched the impact. Center mass. 840 meters. First round hit. The role player went down. Exercise protocols. Hit meant out of play. She worked the bolt. Smooth. Ejected brass. Chambered fresh round. Rotated to east position. 640 meters. Closer, but target was moving. Repositioning. More difficult shot despite shorter distance. Lead calculation. Target moving left to right at approximately 2 miles per hour. Lead half a body width. Account for continued movement during bullet flight time. Breathe, calculate, execute, squeeze. Second rifle shot. Second impact, 640 meters. Moving target, perfect. Both sniper positions neutralized. Assault element cleared to move. Callahan's voice over radio, calm, professional. Good shooting, assault element moving. Tessa safed her rifle, displaced to medical staging position. Transition from tactical to medical. 40 meters of movement, quick but controlled. Supplies staged, ready for casualties that might come. Hoping they wouldn't, prepared if they did. Drake established security position. Rifle covering approaches. Protecting the medical area. The new doctrine in action. Medical security. Someone whose job was keeping the corpsmen alive to keep others alive. The assault element moved on the compound. Tessa tracked their movement through her rifle scope from medical position. Watching, monitoring, ready to transition back to tactical if required. The breach came fast. Explosive charge on door. Entry team flowing through. Radio chatter picking up. Contact reports. Room clearing. Hostage identification. Then Sullivan's voice. Strained. Wrong. Contact. I'm hit. Leg. Bad. Medical crisis. Tessa's brain engaged instantly. Hit leg bad meant arterial involvement. Meant hemorrhage. Meant clock starting. Location. Compound interior. North room. Can't move. Bleeding heavy. Femoral involvement. Had to be. Heavy bleeding from leg meant femoral artery. Meant minutes before shock. Meant immediate intervention required, but the compound wasn't secured. Enemy still active. Moving to Sullivan meant exposure. Meant risk. Callahan's voice cut through. Command decision under pressure. Marlow compound not secure. Enemy repositioning. Sniper active on West Ridge. 600 meters. Has angle on our position. Impossible choice. Sullivan bleeding out. Enemy sniper threatening team. Medical necessity versus tactical necessity. Except it wasn't a choice. It was sequence. It was integration. Tessa's response was immediate. Calm. Chief, your primary medical. Move to Sullivan. High tourniquet. Femoral involvement likely. I'll handle the sniper. Drake didn't question. Grabbed the backup medical kit. Moved toward compound. Trusting her assessment. Trusting the integration. Tessa rotated back to her rifle. Found the West Ridge through scope. 600 meters. Saw the sniper. Saw the threat. Saw the target that stood between her team and mission success. But this time was different. No time for careful breathing cycles. No time for perfect position. No time for optimal conditions. Sullivan had 90 seconds before hemorrhagic shock made intervention difficult. Drake needed that time to reach him, to apply tourniquet, to stop the bleeding. 90 seconds meant Tessa had 30 seconds to neutralize the threat, 30 seconds to make a shot that normally required 2 minutes of preparation. She didn't have 2 minutes. She had now. Position adequate, not perfect. Breathing controlled, not optimal. Heart rate 72, not 65. But adequate was enough. Training took over. Thousands of hours of repetition producing capability that functioned under pressure. 600 meters. Wind 8 knots. Moving target 30 seconds. Calculate. Adjust. Execute. Squeeze. Impact. Center mass. 600 meters under time pressure with imperfect setup. Third perfect shot. Third threat neutralized. Radio immediate. Threat down. Medical. How's Sullivan? Drake's voice came back. Professional. Controlled. Tourniquet. Applied. Bleeding controlled. He's stable. Good call on femoral involvement. Tessa didn't respond, already moving, grabbing her pack, sprinting toward compound. Transition from tactical back to medical. Her primary mission, her core identity, 35 meters of exposure. Enemy potentially still active. But Sullivan needed advanced medical intervention, needed IV access, needed fluid resuscitation, needed a corpsman, not just a combat lifesaver. She covered the distance in seconds, entered compound, found Sullivan in North Room. Drake had positioned tourniquet high on thigh. Perfect placement. Bleeding stopped. Crisis stabilized. But Sullivan's face was pale. Shock beginning. Time still critical. Tessa dropped beside him. Pack open, hands moving with practiced precision. Corporal, you're going to be fine. Tourniquet's good. I'm starting an IV. Stay with me. IV catheter, 18 gauge, left antecubital, first stick, lactated ringers wide open, fluid resuscitation starting, combating shock before it progressed. Sullivan's eyes focused on her, young face showing fear poorly disguised as bravery. Doc, am I going to lose the leg? No, clean arterial injury, repairable. You'll be running again in 6 months. Behind her, Callahan and Covington were securing hostages, 11 civilians, frightened but alive. The mission objective being achieved while medical intervention happened simultaneously. Then the sound, distinctive crack of incoming round. Ricochet, training ammunition hitting stone and fragmenting. Sharp pain in Tessa's right shoulder. Hot, immediate, fragment impact. Small piece of copper jacket finding flesh. She ignored it. Continued IV setup, continued assessment. Sullivan's need greater than her own discomfort. Drake saw blood spreading on her uniform sleeve, saw her continuing to work despite injury. Doc, you're hit. Aware, Chief. Minor. Sullivan's critical. I'm operational. She elevated Sullivan's legs, positioned him for shock management, assessed for additional injuries. Her wound could wait. His couldn't. Radio traffic indicated compound secure. All hostages accounted for. All enemy role players neutralized or withdrawn per exercise protocols. Mission success, but the human cost was real. Sullivan wounded, Tessa wounded, training scenario producing training casualties. Covington appeared in doorway, saw Sullivan stabilized, saw Tessa bleeding, saw the integration in action, medical intervention under fire, tactical capability protecting medical mission, both happening simultaneously. Doc, you need treatment. Sullivan needs evacuation, radio for medevac. I'm stable. She applied pressure dressing to Sullivan's wound, secured the tourniquet, prepared him for transport. Professional execution despite her own injury, despite blood seeping through her sleeve, despite pain radiating from shoulder. Drake moved to her, gentle but firm. Corpsman, let me look at that shoulder. After we get Sullivan secured. Now, command voice. Chief Warrant Officer pulling rank, making it order not request. Tessa yielded. Let Drake examine her wound. Small entry point, fragment lodged in muscle, not arterial, not immediately dangerous, but requiring medical facility intervention for fragment extraction. You're going to medical with Sullivan. Mission's not complete. Mission's complete. Hostages secure. Team secure. You did your job, both jobs. Now let someone take care of you. The medevac helicopter arrived within 20 minutes. Sullivan loaded first. Critical. Then Tessa. Walking wounded, but wounded nonetheless. As the helicopter lifted off, she looked down at the compound, at the team securing the area, at the successful mission accomplished through integration of capabilities, medical and tactical, working together, working completely. The medical facility processed them efficiently. Sullivan to surgery for arterial repair, Tessa to minor procedures for fragment extraction. Both stable, both expected full recovery. Callahan arrived during Tessa's procedure, waited while the surgeon worked. Local anesthesia, small incision, fragment removed, wound cleaned, sutured, bandaged. When she emerged arm in sling, he was waiting with expression that mixed concern with something else. Pride, perhaps. Recognition. How's Sullivan? In surgery. Prognosis good. Clean repair. He'll be fine. Relief visible on her face. First genuine emotion since the mission began. Sullivan's survival mattered more than her own injury. Callahan gestured to a consultation room. Private space. Command discussion needed. They sat. Tessa's shoulder throbbing despite pain medication. But alert. Focused. That was exceptional work, Corpsman. You neutralized 3 enemy positions while simultaneously managing critical medical casualty. That's integration at a level I've never seen. Just doing my job, gunnery sergeant, both parts of it. It's more than that. You've demonstrated something important, shown that specialization isn't the only model. That integration can be force multiplier when done right. He pulled out paperwork, official documentation. I'm recommending you for Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat Valor device. Your actions today saved Sullivan's life and enabled mission success. That deserves recognition. Tessa accepted the paperwork, but her expression showed discomfort with recognition. Thank you, Gunnery Sergeant, but I was just using the training, doing what needed done. Exactly. That's what makes it exceptional. You didn't hesitate, didn't freeze trying to decide which role to fill. You flowed between medical and tactical as mission required. That's the model we need. 3 weeks later, Medical Facility Conference Room held more people than normal change of command ceremonies. Colonel Hayes commanding, full team present, senior medical staff. Training command representatives. Tessa stood at attention, shoulder healed, but still slightly stiff. Sullivan beside her on crutches. Healing but present, both receiving recognition for the mission that had tested integration doctrine. Colonel Hayes read the citation, professional military language describing actions that had felt automatic in moment but looked exceptional in retrospect. The medal came with applause, recognition from people who understood what the actions meant, what the integration represented. But more important came next. Callahan stepped forward, held a patch. Marine Force Recon Trident, honorary, not official designation but peer recognition that meant more than official awards. Corpsman Marlowe, this team wants you to have this. Not because you're a recon Marine, you're not. You're Navy, but because you've shown us what integration looks like. Medical and tactical. You've earned our respect. This represents that. He handed her the patch. She took it with hands that trembled slightly. First real crack in composure. This meant something. Peer acceptance. Team recognition. Belonging. Covington spoke up, voice carrying emotion unusual for him. Doc, I owe you an apology, public apology. I doubted you from day one. Questioned whether you could handle it, whether you belonged. I was wrong about everything. You're not just qualified, you're exceptional, and I'm honored to serve with you. Sullivan on crutches added his voice. You saved my life, under fire, while wounded yourself. That's beyond duty. That's brotherhood, or sisterhood. Whatever, you're one of us, completely. Drake remained quiet, but his expression said everything. The evaluation complete, the assessment final, recognition absolute. The ceremony concluded efficiently. But afterward, in quieter moments, the real integration happened. Team members approaching individually, sharing respect, sharing recognition, building bonds that combat creates and excellence cements. 6 months passed. The training facility at Camp Pendleton had transformed. A new building stood where storage sheds used to be. Purpose-built, designed specifically for integrated combat medicine training. The doctrine that Tessa had demonstrated was now being formalized, systematized, taught. She stood before 18 students, Navy corpsmen and Army medics, all selected for advanced training, all here to learn integration. Medical and tactical, complete capability. Corporal Dalton Reed, no longer the nervous 19-year-old, served as her assistant instructor. He'd grown into the role, learned from watching, absorbed the lessons, now help teach them. Integrated combat medicine isn't about being tactical medic or combat corpsman, Tessa said to the class. It's about understanding that your mission might require both skill sets simultaneously, about not limiting yourself to single role when situation demands flexibility. The students watched with attention that came from understanding this was new, revolutionary, important. Medical remains primary, always. You're here to save lives. But sometimes saving lives requires protecting lives. Sometimes healing requires security. Sometimes you need complete capability. She demonstrated medical treatment under simulated fire, tourniquet application while maintaining tactical awareness, 4-access while directing security, the integration that had saved Sullivan, that had completed the mission, that had proven the concept. After class, Sullivan appeared, walking normally now, leg fully healed, surgery successful, physical therapy complete, back on full duty. The scar remained, but function was perfect. Doc, you've got a visitor. Tessa looked up, saw the woman standing in the doorway, silver hair, gentle smile, eyes that held both pride and relief. Her mother. She hadn't seen her in 6 months, not since before the mission, before the integration, before breaking the promise. They embraced, her mother's arms tight, Relief and pride mixing together in a hug that lasted longer than either had expected. Mom, I'm sorry, I broke my promise. I picked up the rifle again. Her mother pulled back, looked at her, eyes showing understanding rather than disappointment. Callahan called me, told me what you did, how you saved that young Marine, how you used both skills, medical and tactical, together. Tessa waited, uncertain. The promise had been absolute. Never touch a rifle. Never follow that path. Baby, I never wanted you to be helpless. I wanted you safe. Wanted you away from the life that killed your father. But what you've done isn't what he did. You're not him. You're something better, something complete. He wanted me to be this. In his letter, he said integration. I spent 5 years running from it. Her mother smiled. Tears in eyes, but happy tears. Your father would be so proud. Not because you shoot, because you know when to shoot and when not to. Because you put healing first, but don't abandon protection. Because you're whole instead of limited. They talked for hours, reconciliation that had been 6 months forming. Understanding that her mother's promise had been about fear, not limitation. About protecting daughter from father's fate. About love expressed through concern. But Tessa had found different path, not her father's path, not pure medical path. Integration, complete capability applied with wisdom. That evening, alone in her quarters, Tessa looked at what had accumulated over 6 months. The Recon Trident patch on her wall, her father's journal on the desk, the challenge coin from her last shooting competition next to her corpsman badge. The phone rang, Drake's voice, professional but carrying undercurrent of excitement. Corpsman Marlowe got notification for you. Department of Defense has officially adopted integrated combat medicine as standard doctrine. 14 military facilities are implementing the program. 240 graduates so far. VA is requesting curriculum for 8 states. Tessa absorbed this, the ripple effects, the change spreading through military medicine, the revolution in how people thought about capability and limitation and integration. That's significant, Chief. It's your legacy. You started this, proved it worked, changed the system. We started it, the team, the integration. Fair enough, but there's more. Real-world mission brief tomorrow. Classified, high risk. They're requesting you specifically. Medical and tactical integration required. Interested. She looked at her gear, medical pack ready, rifle case beside it. Both essential, both valued, both parts of who she was. Details are classified until briefing. But it's exactly what you've been training others to do. What you've proven you can do. Medical primary, tactical when required. Integration. She thought about the 18 students learning new doctrine, about Sullivan healed and back on duty, about Covington transformed from skeptic to advocate, about her mother's blessing, about her father's words finally making sense. When's the brief? 0800 tomorrow, dress uniform. This one's going to matter. I'll be there, Chief. She hung up, looked at the medical pack and rifle case side by side, both necessary, both part of complete capability. Outside California, sunset over Pacific Ocean. Same ocean her father had looked at from same base decades ago. Same stars would come out. Same sky would cover warriors preparing for missions that mattered. But Tessa Marlowe wasn't her father, wasn't just a medic, wasn't just a shooter. She was complete. The next morning she'd learn about the mission, learn about the stakes, learn about the opportunity to use everything she was in service of something larger. But tonight was for reflection, for understanding how far she'd come, from running away from capability to embracing integration, from hiding to being complete, from choosing between healer and warrior to being both. Her father's journal lay open to the last page, the final words he'd written before cancer took him. The measure of a warrior isn't the lives taken, it's the lives protected, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to heal, the completeness to do both when required. Be complete, Tessa. Make me proud. She'd run from those words for 5 years, hidden from the challenge they represented, built walls between capabilities. Now the walls were down, the integration complete, the identity whole. Tessa Marlowe closed the journal, turned off the light. Prepared for sleep, that would lead to morning, that would lead to mission, that would test everything. Ready, complete, integrated. The story wasn't ending, it was beginning. The real work started now. Fade to black post-screen text. The integrated combat medicine doctrine pioneered by Corpsman Tessa Marlowe is now standard curriculum at 14 U.S. military training facilities. As of 2026, more than 240 Navy corpsmen and Army medics have graduated from the program, carrying forward the principle that healing and protecting are not opposing missions. They are complementary capabilities. The phrase that began with one small woman in the California desert has become a mantra across military medicine. Both hands. Heal when you can, fight when you must, be complete.